Do you have, wait, hold on, do you have quorum?
Let's see, Janet is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have exactly a
Okay.
quorum. So how do I let them in?
I can.
You can do that.
Oh, and you already have. You've already started it.
Yes, I've started the meeting.
Also, you have
there
to,
are- Oh, you want to move them over into the panelists?
you should do that before you start the meeting. But
Yes.
this is too late.
No, it's okay.
She's transcribing everything you say. Shut up. Wow.
So it's okay, Esther. Who would you like me to move over?
Actually, as attendees, they can still speak and talk and show their video, correct?
No. They can
No.
only raise their hand.
I see. Then let's move them over then as panelists.
I can. Who would you like?
Yes. All right, well, let me make sure that we have everyone that is needed as a panelist. Perfect. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time for attending today to the meeting of the Governor's Advisory Committee on Pesticides. I am Esther Reichert, the Pesticides Program Manager and the representative for the chairperson for the Board of Agriculture and Biosecurity. As such, I will be chairing this meeting. In the event that connectivity is lost and an attempt to repair the connection exceeds 30 minutes, the meeting may be terminated or continue at another date and time. Please consult the webpage for updated information. Testifiers will be given a 2-minute limit of testimony per agenda item, and testifiers will be asked to identify yourself and your organization, if any you represent. Now we're going to have a short recording on how testimony can be submitted.
As an attendee, your microphone will be automatically muted during the meeting, unless you are providing testimony. For each agenda item you wish to testify on, please click the Raise Hand button found on your Zoom screen. Board staff will individually enable each testifier to unmute their microphone. When recognized by the chair, please unmute your microphone before speaking, and mute your microphone after you finish speaking in order to prevent audio feedback. When testifying, you will be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 2 minutes of testimony per agenda item. If you are dialing in by phone, when the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may indicate you want to testify by entering star and then 9 on your phone's keypad. After entering star and then 9, a voice prompt will let you know that the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chairperson, you may unmute yourself by pressing star and then 6 on your phone. A voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you are finished speaking, please enter star and then 6 again to mute yourself. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. So I will now call this meeting to order at 9:04 a.m. So I will take a roll call of the committee members present. When your name is called, please indicate your presence with a here or present and state who, if anyone over the age of 18, is present in the room with you. Otherwise, confirm that you are alone if you are online. This also serves as a roll call vote. For each subsequent vote, I will ask if there are any objections or abstentions. If there are none, then the motion will be approved on the same basis as the initial roll call. So, Troy Sakihara is absent. Melvin Takuda,
Present.
Dr. Chin Lee.
Member Takuda, are you alone?
Oh, yes.
Present, present.
And Dr. Lee, are you alone?
Yes,
And Melvin Takuda, are you alone?
Yes, I am alone.
Judson Laird,
Present, just myself.
Janet Ashman. You are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I'm present and alone. Can you
Steve
hear me?
Russo? Yes, we heard you. Thank you.
I'm present in person.
Nicholas Testa
Present, and I'm alone.
and Matthew Liam.
Present, alone.
Perfect. So we will move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes for October 2nd, 2024. Does anyone from the public wish to testify? Seeing none, we will now have board discussion. So I want to point out that the draft minutes will be amended to include who voted yes, no, or abstained from the vote. Did anyone else have any thoughts on the minutes?
Yeah, I don't know if this makes the minutes. Can you hear me? Can I talk?
Yes, we can
Sorry.
hear you.
I mean, I recall only being present for the first pesticide. It was kind of a long time ago, but there was a lot of discussion that I recall about the reason that it was requested to be on the RUP list was there was like a $500,000 study that I think Dr. Lee was involved with, and the funding wasn't approved. So the idea was to put it on the RUP list and keep pursuing the funding for the groundwater study. And if the groundwater study proved that it was acceptable risk, then it would be taken off the RUP list. And then Justin was saying that he was using, I mean, these are my notes from recall, but he uses that chemistry and he would have to switch to a different chemistry that killed beneficial insects, where that pesticide did not kill beneficial insects. And once it got it, oh, go ahead.
No problem. So your concern is that the minutes weren't descriptive enough to capture those details.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
does anyone recall that discussion?
I do remember about the $500,000 study, but I will put in that the minutes need to be amended to include more detailed information about the discussions that occurred.
Sure.
I agree with that also. I thought they weren't complete, and there was a lot of discussion and I think a lot of misunderstanding about what we were supposed to be voting on, and there was a lot of confusion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have any questions? Oh, Melvin Takuda, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Esther, actually, it's not about the discussion, but my status of being in my office alone has changed. I share an office with another person over the age of 18, but I am on a headset, so the other person cannot hear our discussion, and my monitor is faced away from that person, so he can't
Okay.
see that.
Is that sufficient?
Do they have any interest in what we're talking about? Any?
No.
Like, yeah, I think it's okay.
Okay, then we'll proceed.
Thank you.
Okay, so can I ask a procedural question just for approving minutes? So we would, just so we're clear, we would propose approving them with amendments as discussed by Jack, Janet, and Matt? Is that how we would frame that?
I don't think so.
You might have to come back.
Well, I might have to
Or would we just,
delay the approval until the next meeting.
so we would vote to defer the approval? Like I'm asking mechanically,
Yeah,
what,
yeah,
how do we
yeah.
handle this?
Make a motion to defer the.
I don't think you have to make a motion. You could just defer it.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll
But
defer it.
maybe now everyone can have their input so that you can make sure the next minutes reflect what everybody wants.
Okay.
Okay, so we will defer the item. Comments I have so far are the $1 million study. Actions referring to the outcome on whether that study can be funded or not,
Is that
and if
the-
it is funded.
Is that the groundwater study that's on page 3? Line 105 and 106. I mean, I'm not saying maybe this was where the discussion happened.
Yeah, but it obviously wasn't concise enough to meet
Okay, but
the concerns.
but that might be the study you guys are talking about. It's 403,000.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
And then also discussions on alternative practices and beneficial insects. And any other topics that anyone can remember to make sure that we hit when it's being amended or revised.
Yeah.
Yes, Matt.
I asked if the usage could be amended to use it only under the UIC line or on soils with low percolation. I believe the answer was that could not be amended in the guidelines. It's either restricted use or non-restricted use. Is that correct?
It might be, but there is a recording of the meeting, so.
Okay. That's all I recall in my notes.
I think if we go back to the recording, am I unmuted? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Esther, I think if you look at the recording, it'll show you a lot of things that weren't captured. And of course, it would be ridiculous to have every single word in the minutes, but the gist of a lot of the discussion, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Going once? Going twice? Okay, so for the approval of the minutes for October 2nd, 2024, we will defer it until the next meeting. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we will not be holding introductions since the members of the committee have not changed since the last meeting. Just a reminder, testifiers are reminded that there is a 2-minute limit of testimony per agenda item. We'll move on to the first item listed under the agenda in section 5. The request is to cancel the special local needs label Hawaii 2505 for Viking EPA registration number 1015-78. I will summarize the request from the pesticides branch since the proposal and supplemental documents were submitted to the committee in advance of this meeting and made available on the department's website. Adam Yamamoto, the acting supervisor of the registration and education section, is available for any questions. And I want to iterate that the proposal date was inaccurately marked as March 27th, 2026. The accurate date would have been February 27th, 2026, when the documents were sent out to the committee members. So a special local needs label is a registration under Section 24C of the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, allowing states to permit additional uses of federally registered pesticides to address specific localized pest issues. Vicane contains the active ingredient sulfurofluoride and is the primary and most widely used product for the fumigation of structures to treat termites and other pests. Vicane is a gas fumigant and has an aeration period that is determined by the volume of the structure. SLN, Special Local Needs Hawaii 2505, allowed the California aeration procedure, also known as CAP, as an additional aeration procedure in the state of Hawaii. CAP was developed as a way for applicators to aerate the structure without having to enter it, thus minimizing the exposure risk to Vicane. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, informed the department that it cannot support the SLN registration of Hawaii 2505 since it did not meet the requirements of a 24C registration and requested the state to withdraw and cancel the SLN use. Does anyone from the public wish to give testimony? Seeing none, we will now have board discussion. Does anyone have questions?
So is there an alternative way, a different approach that can be used short of re-registering the product to allow Hawaii fumigators to use a CAP process?
So there are two ways. One is the registrant will have to resubmit their registration to EPA as a Section 3. So that would be the normal labeling requirements that are required for any label. The second alternative would be similar to what California has done, which is to go for what's considered 24A registration, which would require laws and rule changes on the state ends, which is something the branch is looking into. However, because of the administrative process of that that way, it will take longer than what we had tried to do with the 24C.
Okay, and what would be the approximate timelines of both options? Re-registrations like years, like 5 years?
It would
3
depend
years?
if the registrant is amenable to that,
Sure.
going through a Section 3, which might require additional studies they might need to do on their end, or just reference the studies they have done with California. And then that would include extra registration fees to EPA as well. So I don't know the cost burden on the registrant to go through that process. For our process, it would, like I said, it's just administrative.
But the EPA process would take several
Longer.
years.
Yes, several years.
Yeah. Okay, and then option 2.
Option 2, which is going through the state. I'm gonna give it a ballpark of potentially 2 years. Because right now we need to finish our current rule changes before I attempt to combat another rule change. So.
Can I ask some clarifying questions? So
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, we're talking about removing SLN, but we still have access to the actual label, correct?
So yes, the Vicane label that is marketed with the product itself would be available. It's just the special local needs label, which allowed the use of CAP procedures, would be removed from users.
Right. But it wouldn't prevent anyone from being able to do Vicane applications
That's correct.
per the label on the islands. I think my concern is, I think in the SLN, it says that this aeration procedure supersedes aeration procedures 1 and 2 in the label. And I think that's where we made a mistake. It should say in addition to the federal label. I don't think SLNs are supposed to go against the federal label. We can't say SLN trumps label. You have to say it complements label. So I think that's where the problem lies. And now that we've gotten a rejection, I don't know that there's ever an option to go back and resubmit. But my thought is it should have been worded instead of that one sentence is where I think they came back and said, you can't make an SLN that says that they cannot look at the label anymore because it says it supersedes it. Does that make sense?
I don't think that was an issue that EPA has brought up at all. It wasn't about the language or the wording in the label itself being more restrictive. It's more of the process of what a 24C SLN allows wasn't applicable or the most appropriate use for allowing this additional application method.
May I add some context?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Sorry, Adam Yamamoto, again with the acting supervisor for registration and education. I was initially the one that spoke with EPA when they wanted us to withdraw the SLN. So their issue was that the SLN did not meet the use pattern of the 24C. Or a change or addition to the use pattern. So the addition of the aeration procedure, the cap, was did not expand the actual use of the Vicane product. So that's why they requested that we withdraw the 24C. So yeah, again, not the language specific what you were referring to, but just that the cap did not fulfill the needs or the requirements of what a 24C is, of additional uses and applications of a product.
Help me also understand, how is this gonna really affect the guys in the industry? Because to me, it just says that they have to put a SCBA on and go in there and open the windows after X amount of time has passed. How is this gonna hurt you? That's what I want to know from the industry. How's it going to hurt you, this change to not use the SLN anymore?
Well, so I guess I would say inherently when you have to wear something like an SCBA, any PPA, right? You're engaging in an elevated risk. So the cap is designed to keep the applicator outside the structure while the aeration procedure is going. And so that person who has to put on an SCBA and go inside doesn't have to do that now, which means their personal risk has gone down. I think the best way to maybe kind of summarize what Adam said would be like, rather than adding a crop, we're changing the REI is kind of how you might think about this in an agricultural sense. That's what they were asking the federal government to do. More similarly, not exactly the same, not a one-to-one. But
So Steve, you said you guys are going to still keep using Vicane. You're just going to have to change the procedures.
well, there's no, we have to continue using the procedure that's on the label. So there is no alternative to Vicane, no practical one for whole structural fumigation. So there's a procedure right now to aerate the structure, which involves entering the structure. And the purpose of the cap, as I always understood it, was that it's eliminated that need to enter.
So now you
Separating
will be
the applicator from
entering.
the risk. Well, you already are.
No.
You currently are. Yeah. So currently, someone has to put on SCBA, go inside the structure, open all the doors and windows. And so I guess the point I'm making is that anytime you have to put on some kind of PPE, you're entering into a situation where there's some kind of risk that the PPE is designed to protect you against. And if you don't have to enter the situation where you have to wear the PPE, your risk as a person, as the applicator, is lower.
So
No,
I
I
saw
get
Nick.
that. Yeah. Sorry, Esther.
No, you're fine. I just saw Nick Testa's hand up, so I don't know if you still had comments or.
Okay.
I was just gonna add to what Steve was saying. I'm the overseer of the fumigation safety for Aloha termite, and there is that added risk when people do have to go into the structure to open the windows, to remove equipment from the structure. So when you have cap involved, it's an active aeration process where there's an airflow created by the fans in the structure, positive airflow, and it pulls everything out. So the fumigators don't have to go into the structure until levels of pesticide are a lot lower, and then there's a lot less risk. And also, a benefit side for the industry is that we don't have to keep somebody on site for 2 hours, or two people on site for 2 hours, just sitting, waiting, because there's, as the label currently states, there has to be a 2-hour active aeration, which means somebody has to be on site, and that's just manpower wasted.
So removing this or canceling this SLN would still allow the use of Vicane. It's just as per current label requirements. Folks would no longer be able to use this CAP procedure, which would eliminate the use of an SCBA and lower personal risk.
Okay, so what our purpose on this is just awareness that, hey, we have to remove an SLN, or is it for advice?
So written in law right now, if the department wants to cancel any registered products, including SLNs, then we would need to consult with the advisory committee along with the Department of Health. So this is more of an administrative process, but it's good to get everyone's input. And the chair will make the decision.
And just so we're clear, the EPA is telling you that we need to cancel the SLN.
That
So in
is
other words, that either we just choose to cancel it as a state or they cancel it.
Yes,
Because
right now, EPA has informally asked us. If we
Right.
do not, then they will formally issue. And with it. Yeah.
When would this
Yeah.
go into effect? The SLN is canceled.
So right now, like I said, after the discussions made here, it will be presented to the chairperson. The chairperson will make a decision. The Department of Health's chair also has to make a decision. So once they both make a decision, we'll make the date most likely a week from then. And I think Adam Y has some more.
Yes, per the EPA, right, a state can withdraw an SLN, but also the registrant of the product can also withdraw the SLN. So just due to the time frame that it would take for us, or the administrative procedure, Douglas Products, the manufacturers and registrants of Vicane, went ahead and withdrew the SLN themselves from the EPA. They did notify the EPA through a written letter and also us as well.
When did we get notified?
When did she?
March 4th.
Okay, so not.
Okay, so in other words, this is kind of a moot discussion because the registrant has withdrawn the SLN. The EPA has said that the SLN as is will not proceed. So do we need to vote on anything for this? Like, there's not really a purpose on that at that point, right? There's no advice to give because
it's technically
it's done already.
It's done.
Yeah, okay. Well.
Well, that was easy.
So, yeah.
So I guess
Apologize.
you guys are changing procedures immediately, huh, Steve?
It's not really changing. So this was the change. The SLN would have brought the change. So we're going to continue doing what we've been doing. This last year, we did already see some changes to the label with the re-registration. So the amount of time people are out of their home this wouldn't have changed that really, but that's gone up. So I think from an industry point of view, it was an efficiency and a safety thing that would have, I think, improved for us. So I guess the next step will be probably the registrant will try to convince the state to amend its rules.
Is that
Next
something the advisory board gets involved with, is to recommend amending the rules like California?
Yeah, so that is one of the purposes of the advisory board is to provide advice and recommendations on rule changes and laws and other pesticide issues. So once the branch decides some language to draft and how we're going to go about it, there'll be another meeting to discuss it and get input from the various industries and organizations we represent.
Okay, and just so I'm clear too, for timelines. So would the branch be likely to draft that proposal in 2026 for a 2027 session, or would be likely to draft it in 2027? Because it's 2026 now, yeah, 2027 for 28.
Yeah, the latter, so 2020. Bring it up
Because
to 2026, 2027.
Are you saying you would need a statutory change, or is this just a regulation, a rule change?
That is something we still need to figure out as well.
To me, this is probably, it's such a moot point, it doesn't matter, but since the SLN was never really approved, I know that's not the right language, but it never went into effect, so the process was never used, the CAP process. Are we really canceling it?
That is incorrect. So the state, once the state issues an SLN, it is valid. EPA has 90 days to review and make comments. So they use that 90-day period to inform us to withdraw.
Okay, I understand, but so would that have meant that during that 90-day period, on the 89th day, if they decided, okay, we don't like this, we don't want it, we could have been using that CAP procedure for 89 days?
That is correct, yes.
Oh,
So right
okay.
now,
I believe, I believe, some applicators on Maui might have already started using it.
yeah, so we would need to do outreach on our part to inform the applicators and the dealers and the manufacturers of the recension.
But again, because the registrant has withdrawn their SLN, there really isn't, we don't need to have a motion on that here, or do we do? There's not really, right? Because there's nothing.
Yeah, no, whether,
Yeah.
I think whether the motion approves or not, it doesn't matter, because per the EPA side,
No, I
it's already
understand.
withdrawn.
What I'm
But yeah.
asking is there a purpose to us having a motion? Or should we just shelve this discussion because it's moot?
Shelve it because it's moot.
Okay.
All right. That was the only other item on the agenda.
Before we move on, can I say one thing? In case people have used the SLN, this CAP procedure, and I don't know if I'm following you, is it possible to just send out an outreach notification to all people with their RUP license for fumigation, just so they know in case, because if maybe they weren't here, maybe they started using this CAP procedure, fast forward, I would just want to be notified somehow when things change, for change my current way of doing things. Because I would, it's hard for me to stay in touch with all that if I'm the user.
Yes, so we will notify all of the certified applicators, whether they're for structural or fumigant use or not, of the changes. We will also notify the dealers that sell restricted use pesticide.
And Judson, I'm the president of the Hawaii Pest Control Association. I can also send out something through our association to notify our members. I believe it's only one company that's adopted the CAP procedure at this point, so should be pretty easy outreach, but I'll do that as well on my end.
Right.
Thank you.
Anything else on this? No. Okay. Yes.
I was just gonna say, so in the interim between the time that the registrant notified or took care of this, whatever date that was, March 3rd, I don't know what date it was, but and if they were still using this procedure, would that be considered a violation? And would you go after them? Because technically it would be, wouldn't it?
So we are going to send out the notice as soon as possible. We'll do a 1 week from that notice date. So that way everyone is informed, they can tell everyone they know. And from a week from that notification date is when we will start enforcing.
So you're
Thank you.
basically a cease and desist with a 1 week notice.
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else? No. Okay, so there were no items listed in the old business or new business, so I will now move to adjourn.
Can we raise issues for old or new business? Or is that not allowed because they weren't identified?
They're not in, it would violate sunshine law, but if you have something you want to place onto the agenda, you could talk to Esther for the next meeting. I mean, we can't discuss things or bring up things that are not sufficiently detailed on the agenda.
So how about after we adjourn, still stay on the line if you want to bring up anything else for the next meeting that we should discuss in the next meeting.
And then we could put it on the agenda.
Could we just, I appreciate that, but can it be very general, like discussion about regular meetings or pre-scheduled meetings or meetings more often? Could we just raise that as a general topic?
I think you could with a Oh, good Lord, that would be amending the agenda with a 2/3 vote, I think.
Amending the agenda with.
Because I don't think you would argue that it's not.
It's not substantial.
It's not substantial because it's only you doing some sort of administrative thing. So I guess you could take a vote to hear that,
All
to
right,
discuss the meetings, I guess.
discuss the frequency of meetings.
Yeah,
So may I have a motion to discuss the frequency of our meetings? Does anyone object or abstain? Okay, it is a unanimous vote, so let us start discussing the frequency of our meetings.
to look at and make sure. It's
Would
fine.
you, would
Would
you
one-
like to start, Esther, or would you like one of us to start?
Maybe thinking once a quarter, is that infrequent, too frequent?
I think that would be great. There's so many topics that could be discussed, and it would be within our purview to do that. We have the authority under statute to do that. And I'm speaking for myself, I would really like to be helpful to the department. And because, I mean, you're under a lot of pressure on a lot of different pesticide topics. So I think that would be great if you think you could pull it off administratively.
Does anybody else have any thoughts?
I just would concur. I feel like I want to be helpful. I want to be a part of the process. There's things in the pesticide world that are happening every day, and I just want to be able to participate in it. And I think that any way that we can serve like that by increasing the frequency, since the last one being such a long time ago, it would be helpful in broadening the topics of some of the other things that would be concerning. I feel like this one about Vicane kind of hurts because, like, what do we say about it? Not much of anything when there's other opportunities to talk about other things. If that makes sense.
Anything else?
I concur
Okay.
too, having a regular cadence will help, and then we can like look for items to propose to put on the agenda based on what's going on in that quarter. Yeah.
I agree. And you know, every legislative session, there are always pesticide bills brought up and moved, you know, during the session and sometimes signed into law by the governor. So, you know, maybe during the last quarter, if we're actually going to do it quarterly, during the last quarter, we can be discussing prospective bills, or during the first quarter, we can talk about the bills that are actually at the legislature. That's just one topic.
So does everybody kind of agree that a quarterly schedule is the right one? Has anybody got a different idea?
Okay,
Esther, do you think that's feasible? I mean, are we really talking about 4 times a year?
I'm going to try for 4 times a year, if not, then minimum 2 times per year. Now that I know how to go about doing this, I feel like it's easier and less daunting. So for now, we'll go once per quarter. If there are any issues, I can bring it up at our next quarterly meeting. And we can change the frequency then.
Appreciate that. And I know with other, you know, task forces and committees that I've been involved in, they have pre-scheduled dates so that everybody knows ahead of time. And rarely they're changed because, you know, something or other interferes. There's conflicts with a lot of people. But if that would be helpful to you to have, like, you know, the second Wednesday of every month or whatever, I mean, not every month, every quarter, something like that, maybe people would be amenable to that. They can plan ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So
Thank you.
do I need to make a motion?
No, I mean,
No, it's just,
you could just start scheduling that.
yeah, okay. I think we can make a motion to adjourn now. And like I said, stay on after the meeting is finished so we can discuss topics for the next quarterly meeting.
Not the whole board.
No, not the whole, only those who have topics that they want to bring up. Okay,
Okay,
so
then Esther, one more thing, I'm so sorry, but I don't mean to prolong this, but do you think on old business, you could, instead of having nothing on the next agenda, you could put something like updates on previous, agenda items that we were going to get back to you on, or you were going to get back to us on, just as a standing thing, if there's any updates. Would that be appropriate?
Again, if there are updates, you can.
yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Great, thank
If
you.
there isn't an agenda item already accounting for that topic. Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Esther, this is Melvin Tokuda. I just had one comment. I know we had a advisory committee that was established by HAR, and there was a motion to increase the frequency similar to what we're doing today. I don't know if this committee has the same statutory
We do
maximum
not.
requirements of meetings. It's just something I wanted to bring up because we actually increased the frequency, then we had to rescind that increase.
Yeah, so right now we are not legally bound to meet at a certain time, or the frequency as well is not dictated. So it's whenever the chair, I guess, decides to host a meeting is when a meeting is scheduled.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, well, then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, may I have a second?
Second,
Okay, are there any objections, abstentions? Hearing none, by unanimous vote, the meeting is adjourned at 9:42 a.m. I'm going to